Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Knock Restore First Health's podcast on health topics that are uncommon but matter so much that don't get talked about all the time. Today, we're talking about something incredibly important for older adults and patients recovering at home, and that's fall prevention. Falls are one of the leading causes of injury and hospitalizations for adults over 65. In fact, 1 in 4 adults fall each year, and many of those falls happen right inside the home. And so, to help us understand how patients and families can reduce that risk, I'm joined here today by Amber McKenzie, nurse practitioner with telehealth clinical evals. Amber,
Thank you,
thanks so much for
Jessica.
joining us. Yeah.
Thank you, Jessica, and good morning. At TCE, we provide mobility evaluations, in the comfort of our patients' homes to really focus on helping them safely age gracefully at home.
I know you guys bring so much expertise and really look at each patient and their lifestyle with this full picture. And so as we start talking about falls specifically, the first thing I think about is what are some of the signs that someone might even be at risk for a fall?
Oh, yeah, truly. Some of the common things is, has a patient fallen recently? And when we talk about recently, we're actually talking about in the last 6 to 12 months. One of the simplest things is if you're able to talk to your family member openly, just understanding, do they even have a fear of falling? And so that alone indicates that they're at a higher risk for falling. Watching them walk around their home, looking for things like holding on to furniture or holding on to walls. They're having some difficulty with standing or balancing, and difficulty standing for longer periods of time. It may be they're able to stand for 2 to 3 minutes, or they're able to stand for as long as 10 minutes, but they have pain, shortness of breath, or they're just feeling like they're running out of gas. Other things that you can look for is that they're really slow, a lot slower today than they were 6 months ago with getting around and getting their things done. They may have decided that certain things that they used to do around their home, they simply don't do anymore. And that could open up a conversation about, are they worried about falling and why are they not doing that anymore?
Yeah, it's so crazy how just recognizing these signs, whether it's you, or it's someone you love, like a grandparent, that's the first step of so many preventable problems in life, but we tend to ignore them until they're really, really bad. But I think with falls, what we've learned is there's just so many problems that come from ignoring these signs. And like you said, it's hard to bring up. And we've talked about this in previous podcasts before, where how do you bring that up when you start noticing these things? And so I think one, if you're listening to this and you kind of notice some of these signs in yourself or someone you're giving care for, just to kind of recap the recent falls within 6 to 12 months, if they're afraid of those falls, you said holding on to furniture, just general weakness and kind of a little bit more trouble getting in and out of chairs. I know that there has to be some things that we can do in the home to reduce the fall risk if we start noticing this time. So what would be like the first step in the home, like 3 to 5 safety tips, if you will, inside the home?
Sure. And even if you're not noticing the things that we talked about, or your loved one hasn't really kind of opened up to talk to you about those things, some things that you can look for that increase the risk of falls within the home are things like throw rugs or slippery surfaces. And so when we talk about slippery surfaces, we think of particularly bathroom and kitchen areas. So putting non-slip surfaces in places like within the tub or shower, just outside the shower and around sink areas that are commonly wet can help prevent slips and falls. Other things that you can look for, a lot of times if we're afraid of falling, even if we haven't communicated it, we'll start to pull things closer to us. So if your loved one has that favorite recliner, they may have additional pieces of furniture that are now a lot closer to that recliner, and they're cluttering the walkways. So helping to open up those walkways and keeping them clear of clutter is a big, fall prevention strategy as well. really focusing on making sure there's proper lighting in hallways and bathrooms for those overnight trips that are unavoidable. Installing grab bars or railings, particularly where there are low seated surfaces like the toilet, around the bathtub, areas that maybe they're going to have to stand for long periods of time and they need that additional support. And then
Yeah.
also, what kind of footwear are they wearing on a regular basis? Are they walking around in slippery socks? Are they wearing proper footwear? And really kind of helping them to find something that's comfortable, safe, and supportive for them to walk around the home.
Yeah, it feels like as you went through that list, like my checklist, my type A personality is like, okay, like we're removing the rugs, we're keeping the walkways clear. And they seem like such small things, but they make such a big difference when you put them all together because you're really creating an environment for success for someone to keep their independence, which is really what this is about, right? It may seem like we're just talking about don't fall, but really it's let's keep your independence as long as we can by doing simple things. So if someone feels like they may be at risk for falls, like they've kind of started listening to this, what do they do next outside of the home?
Yeah, and so many times these conversations can feel to our patients like we're trying to take away their independence, which is actually quite the opposite of what we're trying to do is keep them independent, identify those things that they're no longer doing and how can we get them back to doing those things where reasonably possible. The first step would be really talking to your primary care provider or other provider that you already have an established relationship with, that you can have a good open conversation or your loved one is comfortable having a good open conversation about fall risk and fall prevention. Next things that you can do is talk again to your provider about getting a specialty mobility evaluation and to evaluate your balance and your safety. Getting a home safety assessment where you actually have a
Mm.
specialist who comes in and helps to identify things that we just don't automatically tune into, and then addressing underlying conditions that are apart from falls but really contribute heavily to falls. Things such as wounds, swelling, particularly in the lower extremities, or lymphedema, neuropathy, which is very closely associated with diabetes. So even if you don't know if your loved one has neuropathy, if they have diabetes, they are at high risk for developing neuropathy and may have it without you knowing. And then any weakness, whether you see that or whether your loved one has expressed that. I think lastly, I can't underscore enough how important it is to have a coordinated care within the home and to have the right team surrounding you or your loved one to help keep you independent and keep you safe at home.
And so just by having that conversation with their main healthcare provider, they can be pointed to the right people for a home safety assessment and these evals and getting coordinated care. They don't have to do this all by themselves. It feels like a lot, but it's just that one conversation, right? Okay. Yeah, I know so
Absolutely.
many of our listeners are probably thinking that. So it sounds like what you've told us is just to sum it up is that falls are so preventable when patients and families just know what to look for and who to talk to and what questions to ask just to make their homes safer, make sure that they get to keep their independence as long as possible. So, for you, our listeners, if you or a loved one are struggling with these mobility challenges or other health conditions at home, support is available and it can be just as simple as one conversation. Amber, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Yep. And we will see you guys next time on The Knock.